Hello, and welcome to my channel, The Red Frost. Tonight, I'm going to tell you a tale only befitting October, a tale that is worthy of Halloween. Just as my friend here, it will hopefully liven your insides and show you the things you very much fear on Halloween. This is a true story. A story that happened to me many years ago when I was back in college. Okay, not that many years ago. Okay, many years ago. Many years ago when I was back in college. I was looking for a place to live. My girlfriend and I had spent all summer trying to figure out where we would live come the fall semester. My parents, luckily, were building a house. It had no inside yet, no lights, only particle board. We had been searching for a place for months now. We had stayed in hotels and spent too much money that college kids don't have. So, we went to this new house. Only thing on the floor was a mattress that my father had drug over the day before. We got to the house late with some food, chips, drinks, water. Not much more. It was about 10 p.m. We walked into the house. Again, no lights, so we had to use flashlights to see where we were going. There was a steep drop-off from the stairs as no railing had been placed there yet. We unpacked our stuff, put our food out on the counter. Well, particle board, I guess. Put our food out on the particle board. Stood in the kitchen, or would-be kitchen, and chowed down on some hummus, crackers, cheese, and bread. As night continued on, slowly but surely, and the moon sank below the mountains in the background, sudden darkness came over. The house everywhere was pitch black, and unless you had a flashlight, you couldn't even see 5 feet in front of you. There was usually a gorgeous view of the mountains in the morning. However, being as dark as it was, there was not a chance we'd see such things. In fact, what happened that night was so strange, so different, that I still can't explain it to this very day. Now, I'm not saying it's a ghost. I'm not saying it's a spirit. I'm not saying it's an alien. I'm just saying what happened to me that night was something I've never experienced before and don't ever want to experience it again. Now, as we were finishing up, we collected our things and put them in a plastic bag. Luckily, the plumbing was working, so we could wash up a little bit. We finished getting ready for bed. And as my girlfriend got into bed, she covered herself up and began to fall asleep. Now, unlike her, I've always been a night owl. I have always been somebody who loves the night. I also suffer from terrible insomnia, so I guess it's more of a love-hate relationship. However, that evening, as my girlfriend was sleeping, I was walking around the house, looking at what my new parents' house, or my parents' new house, would look like when it was finished. As insomnia once again grabbed hold of me, I went outside. I looked around. It was a beautiful night. The stars were twinkling. But once again, there was no moon. It was completely black. And without a flashlight, I couldn't see a thing. I walked back into the house to a startled girlfriend. She was sitting up in bed, asking where I had been. I said I had been outside. I said I had been walking and looking at the stars. She started to yell at me. She started to say that I was lying, that indeed I was full of crap. And I said, no, I was outside the whole time. She still wouldn't believe me and went into a frantic rage about the fact of the noise of me hitting pipes in the basement over and over again. As I did so, she thought I was almost hitting them so hard that it was making a metallic screaming sound. However, I did no such thing. I entered the house again and went down into the basement after I had visited her in the bedroom. I was looking for a source for the sound. I couldn't find one. Yes, there was pipes. Yes, there was no insulation. The house, as far as I could tell, was empty. I climbed back up the newly placed stairs. They creaked under my feet due to the logs that they were made out of. It was again completely dark. As I climbed the stairs, I got to the top, and I heard a noise. A very distinctive noise that I've never heard in my life before. It was like somebody was screaming, mixed with somebody hitting a pipe at that exact moment. Yet the scream resonated throughout the house and lasted for 3 to 4 seconds. I turned around. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I had never experienced a sound like that before. I, at the same moment, heard my girlfriend yell, "Stop doing that." I yelled back, "It was not me." She again was not persuaded by my remarks. I decided it would be best to turn in, rather than continue this silly thing that was occurring. I thought in my mind, it was obviously nothing. It was something I've never heard before, but sure, there are many things you never hear before. You go into the woods, and you hear a fox, and it sounds like somebody's screaming and being stabbed. You would never know that unless you went into the woods, that foxes make such eerie noises. I got into bed. My girlfriend was now fast asleep. I was sitting there, looking out the window, trying to look at the stars. But again, everything except outside the window was so pitch black, I could not see a thing. As I sat there, I was reading a book with a red headlamp as not to wake my girlfriend at the time. Once again, I heard a loud metal scream. It originated from the basement. Now keep in mind, this was a house that had 3 stories, and on the top floor were the bedrooms. On the top floor is where we laid at the moment. The loud metal scream, the metallic hiss, originated in the deep, dark basement. It was indeed where the water heater and the heater was. But the house was heated by central heating, which was off. The hot water was off. There was not a single thing that could have made that noise that I have ever heard before. I sat up in bed. It was only once. One shriek. One metallic shriek that made me stiff as a bone. I looked out the door that had no door. It was simply a door frame. I looked from where the sound was coming from. I decided I should get out of bed. I rose and started walking towards the door, at which point I heard two very distinctive screams. Again, with the same metallic aftertone that hadn't been present in the scream I had just heard. I stood in my tracks. I looked back at the bedroom, my girlfriend now awake. She was staring at me, realizing that I had just risen from bed when this had happened. I looked at her, as if unable to move. She called to me to come back to bed. She was frightened, and I must admit, so was I. As I took a step back into the bedroom, another scream rang out, although this time, a very distinctive sound that almost sounded like the word no. I stopped, dead in my tracks once again. My girlfriend, wide-eyed, stared at me. I could only see her eyes in the darkness. I felt as if the whole house was caving in behind me. I felt eyes on the back of my neck. I could almost feel breathing. Now, being the man I was, I brushed it off. I said, it must be something to do with the piping. I told my girlfriend, don't worry, I've heard this before, knowing I clearly had not. I said it's time to go back to bed. As I crept back to the bed, I tucked myself in. I lay there, gently thinking about the noise, turning it over in my head, thinking, it's gotta be something in the pipes. It has to be maybe a mouse, maybe a rat, who knows. As I lay there, I slowly started to drift off to sleep. And this time, the scream was not just a scream, but rather multiple, coming in and out, getting louder and softer, as if the metallic screams were coming up the stairs, all the way up the stairs towards the bedroom. The way they rang out, the first one seemed far away, the second one closer, and the third one at almost the entrance of the doorway. I jumped up and looked at the doorway. I could not see anything, as it was once again completely dark. I turned on a flashlight. I was staring outside the room, frozen by fear. My girlfriend touched me on the side. She was shaking. I said, I'll go check it out. I got out of bed. I started to walk again to the door. And once again, a loud scream, metallic scream, rang out. Something, again, I have never heard before until this night. Once again, it stopped me in my tracks. But I felt I must voyage on. I must figure out what this is. I convinced myself it was nothing to worry about. I walked down the stairs, all the way down to the basement. There's no radiator. There's nothing that could create such a sound that I knew of, but I figured I was going to figure it out so I could sleep peacefully and my girlfriend could do the same. I continued down the stairs, drawing closer to the utility room. As I went to the utility room, as I turned the last flight of stairs, All of a sudden, above me, I heard another metallic scream. Before even assessing what it was, I was running up the stairs in order to once again find my girlfriend standing straight up, shaking. When I asked her what had happened, she said the metallic scream had come from her room, from the room we were sharing that very night. It had not come from the basement. It had not come from me. Now she was convinced it was something else. I just watched her as she told me what had happened, as she told me how close the noise truly was. I tried to calm her down, but that wouldn't happen. She was so terrified about what she heard. She demanded that we sleep in the car. I said it's okay. I tried to calm her. I said it's nothing to worry about. It's only the house. It's an unfinished house. Almost as if whatever it was waiting for me to finish my sentence. Another metallic scream came from the hallway behind me. It was close. Way, way too close. I turned my head slowly to look. But once again, nothing appeared in the darkness. My girlfriend was behind me, too scared to advance to my cover, too scared to even move a muscle. I turned back and looked at her. She said, "Now, we are going to the car." Thoroughly convinced this time something strange was going on, I decided this was a good idea. We started grabbing our things, pillows, blankets, whatever we needed to sleep in the car. As we snatched them up in a quick hurry, I grabbed the last few items as we started to head out the bedroom door, and all of a sudden the sound came again. And this time, I could have swore it said "now." I could have swore to this very day. And keep in mind, I am an atheist. I do not believe in ghosts. But I could have swore to this very day it said "now." As we exited the house, we did so very quickly. I was just about to close the door when I heard a succession of these very same screams. These very same metallic screams that had haunted us at that night. But rather than just being one or two, they had multiplied into 3, 4, 5 before I shut the door. I locked it. We ran out to the car, turned the car on, blazed the lights, as if anticipating something will come for us. Something would emerge from the house that we had never seen before, that we had never known about. Convinced that we would have to drive out of that very driveway, drive out of this very new house, as if something was chasing us. We watched and stared out the windows, as if looking for something, anything, to explain what we were hearing. The dead silence that came was almost as antagonizing as the sounds I heard inside, almost asking you to look out the windows closer, to stay, to try to figure out what was going on. I wanted to know. I wanted to know what that sound was. I had never heard something like that in my life. I told her to wait. She grabbed my arm and said no. But I said, wait just 1 minute. I started to advance down the walkway towards the stairs into the house. Keys in my hand, I got to the house. I slowly unbolted the deadbolt. As I entered, I realized I did not have my flashlight. I had left it in the car. The car lights beamed brightly, but unfortunately they were not pointed at the door. They were pointed lower at the garage. I was up high, and darkness was around me on the very front porch. As I slowly inserted the key and turned it, a loud crack as the deadbolt opened. I slowly stepped inside, closing the door quietly behind me. The house was quiet. Not a sound. Not a sound in sight. I listened for minutes, seconds. In fact, time seemed to disappear. Nothing before have I ever heard anything like this in my life. But now, it was almost as if the silence, the wind that was ripping around me, inside the front door as I stood there, as I had already opened it for a quick escape. But the silence was almost creepier than the noises I had heard before. It felt like many eyes were watching me. You know the feeling. We all do. It's unexplainable, but you know it when you feel it. I sat there for longer, waiting for the noise, hoping to hear it once more, as if my ears had been playing tricks on me the whole time. But nothing. Just silence. Just silence. It was like a tomb. Except for the wind outside, everything in the house seemed to not move. What had I heard? What were those noises? I never heard them before when I came there in the day. When we had laid the mattress down, not a single sound was emitted in that house. But at night, something was different. At night, something is always different.